2008 Cadillac CTS Performance, and today I'll show you the interior and exterior of the car and then take you for a drive. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Before we get to the review today, I first want to thank you all again for subscribing and for watching these videos. I really appreciate the support you've shown towards me and towards the channel. I absolutely love doing this. It's a really fun hobby. I hope that you guys are loving these videos as well. I know you guys responded really well to the Fleetwood Series 75 video, which I just released a little over a week ago. I've really enjoyed getting to know a lot of new people through that video. We've had more subscribers come in as well, so we're over 1,600 now. So it's really exciting stuff, and I'm just so amazed to see this channel grow a little bit more. I just want to thank you all so much for that. It really means the world to me. So anyways, let's get back to the video. Today we have a 2008 Cadillac CTS. This is a little bit of a lower end trim. It's, I believe, a performance trim. This is a fairly nice car. I do see these around a lot. They're fairly popular. A lot of people bought them. But I never had that close of an experience with a 2008 second gen CTS before. I'd never ridden in one. I've never driven one. So I never really knew much about these cars. But ever since I got my hands on this one, there are actually some really nice surprises, which I'm excited to show you guys. I just came with some different options and features I just didn't know that Cadillac CTSs had. Anyways, let's go ahead and start the review. Before we take a close look at this specific Cadillac CTS, I would like to actually explain the history of the CTS as a car. The first generation of the Cadillac CTS came out in about 2003 and ran until the 2007 model year. This car was actually the first car, I believe, to actually introduce the Cadillac art and science design theme. It was much more edgy, much more radical, a little bit more sporty looking. It was basically Cadillac's attempt to try and catch up to the Germans who were beating them and the Japanese as well. However, the first generation CTS is not really my favorite car, although I do really like the looks of that car. I'm not a huge fan of the interior. It is a little bit cheaper to me. I didn't like the plastics on the inside, wasn't really quite as beautiful. However, the second generation Cadillac CTS, this one, did solve some of those problems. This car did run from 2008 till about 2014, and I do believe it was a much more beautiful looking car, nicer interior, a lot nicer amenities as well. These cars were also very well performance oriented. With the second generation CTS, Cadillac took it a little bit more seriously and decided to actually do some testing on the Nürburgring. They did a really good job of engineering this car to be a performance vehicle, even for the base models. There was also a third generation CTS that came out in about 2015, and that car was, in my opinion, the nicest looking CTS that there was, and it also looks really beautiful on the inside as well. That car, of course, was discontinued. There no longer is a CTS nameplate in the Cadillac lineup. The CTS now lives on in the Cadillac CT5, which is essentially the same car, just with a little bit of a different name. So that's a little bit of the history of the Cadillac CTS. Let's get back to the review. So next, as usual, moving on to the front of the Cadillac CTS. The most noteworthy thing to point out here is that these headlamps are actually really smart. This car has forward adaptive lighting system, which means that these headlamps actually turn at nighttime depending what direction you turn the steering wheel. So say if you're coming up to a corner, you turn the wheel to the left, the headlamps will also turn to the left a little bit to make it easier to see around the corner. And also up front, we do have a relatively large Cadillac badge on the grille. It is pretty big looking, right in the center of the grille. I like the look of it. A lot of the newer Cadillacs, the Cadillac logo is actually moved up towards the top of the grille just to maintain its center position with the headlights. But the placement of the Cadillac logo on this car looks very nice to me. Now moving along to the side of the Cadillac CTS, there are a few noteworthy things to point out here. My favorite feature from the side view of this car is this vent here. Most people probably think that this is actually not functional, there aren't any holes in it, but actually it is functional. There are actual holes in this vent for air to go through. You can see through it. If you look underneath the hood, you can see the light coming through from outside, and I think that is really cool. Below that fender vent, we also have a General Motors logo down in the bottom fender. I don't really know why General Motors put their logo on a lot of their cars back then in the late 2000s, but they did that just to, I guess you'd know that it's a General Motors vehicle for whatever reason. Now moving back from that front fender, we do have a relatively large front mirror here as well, which is heated, obviously power. That does fold in if you wanted it to. It's not power, you do have to push it in. Further back from that, there's something actually very interesting with the front door handles of the Cadillac CTS. these are actually electronic. So if you pull on the handle, you actually hear the motor turn on, and then it actually opens the door for you, and then you can, of course, close it like normally. Definitely an interesting thing, a little bit more luxurious, I'd say, than a regular mechanical door. And moving a little bit further back, something I noticed about these second generation CTSs is just how small the rear door is compared to the front doors. This door is actually very small looking when you look at it from the side. I guess that makes sense since this is a smaller car, it's more compact. But also, like I said, the front door handles are electronic. These ones are mechanical, so when you pull open the door handle, you actually feel the mechanism working when you move it, but it's very different from the front door handles, which is very interesting. And then back a little bit more, we have a huge C-pillar here. This is actually quite large. Cadillacs have kind of done this for some time, where they have a big C-pillar. And below the C-pillar, we have our fuel door here. This is not capless, unfortunately. There is a regular cap inside of the fuel door, so you do have to open it when you have to fill up your car. Moving on to the back of the Cadillac CTS, the art and science design theme is also very prevalent here. Very edgy once again, very sharp, very nice looking. I do really like how the rear tail light here does act as a spoiler. As you can see, it's kind of tilted in an upwards direction to kind of help flow air over the back of the car. I also really like how there's a good amount of chrome used back here, not just below the Cadillac logo, but we also have a nice strip right along the bumper, which looks very tasteful. I also do like how the taillights are all LED back here. Looks very nice, still pretty modern looking. I do like the looks of it. Another way to make this car stand out as far as sportiness goes, we do have dual exhaust down here, which looks very nice, and it's not fake at all, it's all functional. And finally, in the bottom right corner of the trunk, we have our CTS badge, and that's the only place on the entirety of the outside of the car that we have that particular badge. All right, next let's take a look at the trunk of the Cadillac CTS. Now, what is interesting is that there is a handle underneath the trunk right here, but there is no button to press to release the trunk. You can do that with the key fob, or in the driver's door, there's a button there for the trunk as well. So you press the button, the trunk pops, and then you have to help it up the rest of the way. Now, once the trunk is up, you do have a fair amount of space back here. There's about 13.6 cubic feet of space here. Not a lot, really, considering that there are a lot of bigger cars out there, especially crossovers and SUVs. But for a car this size, it's really not bad. Now, underneath the trunk, we also have a spare tire, which is very helpful, of course, when you get a flat. And we, of course, have a cargo net here stored onto the left. That can be set up in the back of the trunk as well, just to make extra space or just to hold cargo down. Pretty nice trunk area. However, unfortunately, no trunk pull down. This trunk does come down fairly hard. It's not a huge deal, but something that does bother me a little bit, but that's okay. Now let's take a look underneath the hood of the Cadillac CTS and see what's powering it. So, underneath here, we have a 3.6 liter V6 engine. This particular engine is making about 263 horsepower and 253 pound-feet of torque. Definitely healthy numbers for a car that weighs about 4,000 pounds. This engine also gets about 18 miles per gallon in the city and 26 miles per gallon highway, which isn't so bad. But I do kind of wish that was a little bit better, especially for a small car like this. I would have figured it would have gotten better gas mileage than that, but at least it's not awful. Now, although this engine does make a good amount of power, you could also option in a more powerful V6 3.6 liter engine, which made at least 300 horsepower. However, this engine is still very fitting for this car. I do also like the way it looks, although it's all basically just plastic here. Everything is basically covered up, which is really interesting, but it still is a nice engine, fits this car well, and definitely is very sporty. All right, let's take a listen to the exhaust and see how the 3.6 liter V6 sounds. Alright, before we step inside the Cadillac CTS, I would like to show you guys the key fob that came with this car. First of all, I apologize, this did break at some point along the line, so there is tape on here, so please ignore that for now. But anyways, this key fob is fairly nice. We do have our lock, unlock button, our trunk release, and our panic button. You do also have a Cadillac logo on the back, which looks pretty nice. And I believe that some of these fobs also did have a key release for the bottom here, where a key would have come out and you could have used that to unlock your car if you get locked out. But we do have, as you probably noticed, an actual key here. This is fairly nice. You do have a Cadillac logo on it as well. But what is interesting is that some of these CTS models were keyless, kind of like a push button start, except it was more like a little piece of plastic that you grabbed and turned. But this car does not have that, which is a bit of a shame. I do like the convenience of not having an actual key. But this fob overall isn't really the best one in the world because it is made mostly of plastic. That's okay, it still functions well and it works. So there it is. Alright, now that we've taken a good look at the outside of the Cadillac CTS, let's take a look at the inside and see what it's like. Looking at the interior of the Cadillac CTS, I'm actually pretty impressed. First of all, I do like the general design of this interior. It's still very modern looking to me, and it looks a lot more modern than an interior from other Cadillacs of the time, including the DTS. I brought you guys a DTS limousine on the channel before. It's a couple years newer than this one. That was a 2010 model year. But this car seems to just be a more modern looking vehicle than that one was. Just with the flowing dashboard, it has really nice curves to it. The center stack looks really nice where the clock is and everything is just all really nice looking. But we're going to start with the door panel here. First of all, we do have a lot of nice softer touch materials here. At the top of the door, we have kind of a softer plastic. It does have some nice contrast stitching in there, which looks very nice compared to the darker color of that plastic. Then below that, we have nice leather on the door here, on the door handle as well, which is very soft. And then we also have this kind of darker looking material here, which is almost like a carbon fiber weave. I don't believe it's real metal. It still feels fairly nice. It is also throughout the rest of the cabin as well, like on the dashboard, which looks really pretty to me. I do like it. We do have actual metal door handles, which is really nice to up the quality. And by the door handle there, you can see we have memory seats with an easy exit function, which is a very nice option to have. And I'll explain exactly what package it was that this CTS has, which includes the memory seats. Below the memory seat functions, we have our window switches here and mirror controls, as well as door and window locks. What's really surprising is that all 4 windows on this car are automatic down, while the driver and passenger window are also automatic up, which is very nice to have, very luxurious. Like I mentioned before, we have our trunk release button here and a little container here as well. And we have some nice metal trim here. The metal doesn't really feel that real. It doesn't feel extremely nice, which is a little bit of a shame, but it is nice looking at least. And we have a Bose sound system in this car. I believe this is an 8-speaker sound system that came with this car. You can also upgrade and get a 10-speaker Bose sound system as well. And something else I'd like to point out while I'm down here is that on the door sill here, we have actually a nice looking metal piece of trim here. It says Cadillac on it. The Cadillac script looks very beautiful. It actually feels really nice, and it actually looks like it's made out of real metal. Alright, now let's get in the front seat of the CTS and see how comfortable it is. Okay, now we are in the CTS. I do really like these seats. They are actually nicely bolstered. They feel fairly soft, and they're pretty comfortable for riding in this car on long road trips if you had to do that. The headrest does move up and down as you'd expect. It does not move forwards and backwards, but that's okay. We do also have a 10-way power adjustment seat here with lumbar control, which is very nice. I have the controls down by my thigh. You move the seat forwards and backwards, up and down. But what I do want to point out about this seat is that it's actually quite beautiful. The stitching in this seat and the perforation in the leather looks really, really nice. It also has a nice metal V on the backrest of the seat as well. Just really beautiful looking, and I haven't seen a Cadillac seat that looks quite this nice, at least from this era. But before we get any farther with the interior of this car, there is something I'd like to show you guys, which is the original sticker to this car. I'll put a photo of this window sticker up on your page, so if you want to stop the video, you can take a look at it and just read through all the options if you're curious. First of all, this car was upgraded a little bit. It did have some extra options, which includes the luxury level 1 package, and this came with some really nice features that this car has, which helps it to stand out from the base version of the car. So some of the most significant features of this package includes an alarm system. You also had a 6-disc CD changer, which I didn't realize these CTSs could come with, but that's very nice to have. We of course have our upgraded Bose sound system with 8 speakers. We have our seating package, which came with a little bit more controls for the seat, such as the lumbar. You did have heated seats as well, which is a very nice feature to have for when it's cold outside. This package also included the memory seat functions and finally the rain sense wipers, which automatically increase the wiper speed for when the rain gets harder or softer. But those weren't the only options for this car. The automatic transmission was actually a $1,300 option. You could get a 6-speed manual in this car, which is pretty surprising. I didn't realize these CTSs could come with a manual. And we also have a really big panoramic sunroof above my head, which is also a $900 option. So this car is well optioned. It has really nice features that I would get. However, you could get higher packages of this car as well, which would get you nicer things such as keyless start or cooled seats in the front as well. Alright, now getting back to the car, we do have a nice steering wheel in front of me. There are a lot of controls and buttons on here. For the cruise control on the left side, I can increase or decrease my speed if I wanted to. On the right side, I have my radio controls and volume controls, some really nice stuff. There is no Bluetooth on this car, but later CTS models did come with that, and you could also control that from the steering wheel as well. The steering wheel does tilt, but it doesn't have a telescoping function, unfortunately. To the stalk on my left, we have our headlight controls, where you can turn on the automatic headlights or just manually turn them on or off if you wanted to. We also have on the right my windshield wiper controls and for the rain sense wipers as well. And then in front of me, behind the steering wheel here, we have some analog gauges. The gauges do look really nice. I don't mind them. A lot of newer Cadillacs have full digital displays for their gauges, but I still really like the looks of these. But something I do really like about these analog gauges is that when you start up the car, they have a really cool sweeping motion that they do, and it looks really cool, especially at nighttime. To the left of me, we have some more buttons to go through the driver information center. I can see different things such as my fuel economy, my gas mileage, or I can even see stuff like my odometer, tripometers. I have several tripometers on there. Just general information about the car that you'd want to know. Now moving on to my right, we do have a small screen here for the radio and radio presets. If this was a higher option CTS that came with something like navigation, this screen would actually rise up out of the dash and show a larger screen than what is currently shown here. That's kind of a cool feature that you have something moving up and down out of the dashboard. This one unfortunately did not come with that option, but that's okay. This is kind of a cleaner look anyways. But you do also have 5 different channels of presets that you can choose from, so you can have a lot of different radio presets if you really needed them. And then below our little radio screen, we do have an actual clock in the dashboard, which looks very pretty. And what's nice is that this clock does light up beautifully at nighttime, and the rest of the car lights up nicely too. There's actually some nice mood lighting inside of the door panels, which lights up as well. Very nice looking, and I didn't even know that the CTSs had something like that back in the day. Now, although I mentioned that we have a small radio display here for our different presets, they aren't the only screens in this car. There are also 2 very small screens near my knee here on both sides of the car in the center console, which shows the temperature or the heated seat settings for the passenger and driver. But what's really cool is you can use the buttons below these 2 screens to control the dual climate control for either the passenger or driver, as well as the heated seat on this car. Now around the sides and below the clock, we have more buttons for our radio as well as our tuning and volume knob. It's kind of nice that this car still does have real buttons, and they're very easy to use, very easy to get to. And then below all the buttons for the radio, we have our climate control settings there. And then below our climate control buttons, we have another little storage area where you can put some smaller things into, like change or something. And you also have a 12-volt outlet there to plug in your phone or something else, which is nice. Then behind this little storage area, we do have our shifter here. Of course, you just move it into whatever gear you want to be in. But you can also move the shifter off to the right side to manually go through the gears if you want to while you're driving the car. And it also shows you what gear you're in on the left side of your analog clusters there. And as you've noticed, you have a full center console here. You also have 2 cup holders right below my hand here. Really nice size, you can fit bigger cups into. And then behind the cup holders, we have our center console here. There are actually 2 different levels of storage on it. We have a smaller one at the top, and then if you press the other lever, you can open up a larger one at the bottom, which has another 12-volt connector in there as well as an aux connector. But this isn't the only storage in this car. We do have a fairly large glove compartment with 2 shelves in it, one in the bottom and one in the top for extra storage. And then above me, we of course have our visors for the driver and passenger. We have mirrors in there and lights as well, so we can see ourselves when we're driving the car. And then in the middle of the roof here, we do have some controls for our sunroof. There's a button to open or close it, but there's also a power sunshade, which I did not realize these CTSs had power sunshades, but it makes sense considering how large it is. It would be hard to manually close it, but it's a very nice feature to have that. So now, getting into the back seat of the CTS, there's a very similar experience back here that you would get in the front of the car. For example, the seats are just as soft and comfortable. The door panel is just as nice. You still have the nice leather and the faux leather on the top of the door. So it's still a very nice place to be. This seat here is about where I would have it if I was riding in the front, and I still do have a good amount of space here. It's nothing brilliant, but for a smaller car like this, it still works out really well. I do have some mapped storage up here in front of my legs. I don't have any storage in the door, unfortunately, but that's okay. I do have some extra storage in the center console here. If I press it open, there's a little cubby there with another 12-volt outlet, which is very nice. I do also have some vents here, but unfortunately this car did not come with climate control for the rear. I can also flip down this armrest and get some more cup holders if I wanted to for the back seats. Now back here there is also a center pass-through to the trunk. If you lower the center armrest here, you can open up the door and stick some longer stuff through the car if you have to. Some upper end trims of the CTS also had fold down rear seats. And above me, besides the panoramic sunroof, we do have some reading lights up here, so I can turn those on or off if I had to read something in the back seat. And also something really interesting to point out, like I mentioned before, the front doors are electronic while the rear doors are mechanical. And that's why you actually have real door locks on the rear doors. As you can see, they're made out of metal, they feel very nice. You can of course manually unlock or lock the doors. However, in the front you do not have those locks. That's because there isn't a lock there. You have to use the button to automatically lock or unlock the front doors. So it's kind of an interesting quirk that these CTSs had, which you might not have noticed before. Okay, now that we've taken a good look at the interior and exterior of the CTS, let's go ahead and take it for a drive. Driving the 2008 Cadillac CTS. And of course, right away, I can really tell this car rides and handles very differently than any of the other Cadillacs I've had on the channel. Even the 2010 DTS, which was from the same era as this car was. That was a limousine, so of course it rode softly, but this is definitely a bit of a harsher ride than most of the other cars I've had. Now, if I understand this correctly, the CTS back in the day could be ordered in 3 different ways with, I guess, 3 different suspension setups. You could get like a harsher setup, like a medium in the middle, or a softer one. So I'm not totally sure how that worked because this car did not come with magnetic ride control, and I'm not sure if many CTSs had that for the second generation besides the V version. Yeah, and it really does feel good. The current owner of this car, who's also the second owner of this car, really actually told me, commented that this car rides a lot like a Corvette, and in many ways it actually does. I mean, you do feel the road a good bit. You feel fairly low. It definitely handles very nicely. This car is also rear-wheel drive, so it feels like a sports car in many ways, just having the rear-wheel drive, but it's just not as high on the comfort scales as most Cadillacs have been. You know, that's okay. This car wasn't designed to be extremely comfortable. It is comfortable, but it wasn't designed specifically with comfort in mind. Cadillac set different goals for this car, and one of those goals was just to be a really, really good performance sedan, and you know, they took that job and that seriously in creating this car, and they did a pretty good job. This car isn't quite perfect. There's some quality issues, you know, for example, the buttons, the door buttons and the lock buttons, those, you could actually find these exact same buttons in Chevy products from the time. I mean, a lot of this was a parts bin car. You know, they've improved on that much recently with Cadillac, and it's become much better than what it used to be, but that is a gripe that I have, is that many Cadillacs from this era just weren't quite up to par on quality as they should have been. And another small issue that I do have with this car is that there are some blind spots. Just with that big C-pillar back there, turning to my right, there's just a bunch of space that I can't really see anything. And the other problem is that this car didn't have a backup camera, it didn't have backup sensors, the mirrors don't have side blind zone alert for you, so it isn't the easiest sedan to drive, honestly. You know, you get used to it. The mirrors are quite large, at least, so that definitely does help. But some CTSs from this era did come with backup camera, I do know that. The car still looks pretty good to me. I do like the edges that it has. You know, I think in many ways, Cadillacs from this era have aged a lot better than the German counterparts. A lot of Mercedes-Benz models, to me, don't look nearly as good as these cars do from even the same era. But one of the cars that I really think looks in many ways outrageous, I guess it's kind of a love it or hate it type car, is the coupe version of the CTS. Cadillac made a coupe version of the CTS back for the second generation. They of course made a wagon version as well. There were several different kinds, and I really like the looks of the wagon version. The coupe looks good to me, but a lot of people wouldn't like it because that back end of the car is so huge. I mean, you've got a huge trunk and bumper there, and it really looks different. A lot of people wouldn't like that so much. Yeah, the pickup is pretty good, actually. I mean, this isn't the upgraded top-end engine that you could get on this CTS, but it's really not bad. And I was actually surprised with just how good the car sounded when I did the engine exhaust test. I thought that was actually pretty good. Alright, I'm going to put it into sport mode and see what that's like. It actually shifts fairly quickly for me there if I move it forwards and backwards. I'm actually surprised by how quick it is. Alright guys, I'm going to do a quick 0 to 60 run here. See how quick the CTS is. I'm not really sure what to expect. I think it's going to be decent, but we'll see how good. I'm in sport mode. Let it shift automatically. Alright, let's try it. Not bad. Oh, 40? 60 right there. Wow, okay, that was pretty good. There was just a little bit of tire spin. I could barely hear it at the beginning of the run. Definitely a pretty quick car, not bad at all. The funny thing is, this is probably actually one of the quicker performing cars on the channel. And something I did notice is that it would be nice to have magnetic ride control on this car, because going in between and out of sport mode, the chassis feels pretty much the same as it does normally. So it would be nice to have that change in road feel by going in and out of sport mode. That would have been nice. You know what, we have a curvy road up here. I think I may try and take it around some curves and see how it handles them. I'm a little bit excited to do this. Oh yeah. Wow. It's definitely grippy. I mean, around that curve, that felt really good. Wow. Okay, that was pretty good. I'm just impressed by this. This is actually really good. And the nice thing is, the seats do hold you in place pretty well. The bolstering does definitely come in handy when going around these curves. The CTS does a nice job. I'm impressed. You know, this isn't like any traditional Cadillac, but for what Cadillac set out to do with this car, I'd say they succeeded, because this really does feel really, really good. Sporty, suspension feels good. It all is just really a fun driving car, and you know, that's what Cadillac wanted it to be. Well, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this isn't a classic car, not at all like the Fleetwood Series 75 I just brought to you guys, but I definitely like to bring different kinds of Cadillacs to the channel, and different kinds of cars. I know a lot of you guys probably like the classic cars more, but if you like the variety, please let me know. I'd like to talk to you guys again, so please comment in the video. I absolutely love that stuff, and if you're new to the channel, welcome again to the channel. I hope you'll enjoy it. We'll have a lot of fun together. We'll do different car events still. And definitely we'll do some more driving around too. So thank you all so much for everything. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and to come back again soon for more videos. Thank you. Getting getting to know this car, there were actually some nice surprises with it, and we'll get into that, but Mittens likes to interrupt my videos sometimes. A lot of newer cars do have this kind of a front forward lighting system, but I didn't know that the 2008 Cadillac CTS even had that, which is pretty neat. So loud. Ah. This is where my old school used to be, Webster Elementary. They tore it down, unfortunately. My place of education.